Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are absolutely diving headfirst into a really raw, passionate take on personal responsibility. We're breaking down a recent purely stream of consciousness broadcast from a creator who goes by Tomcat. And let me tell you, Tomcat is fundamentally fed up. He is looking at our everyday societal habits and seeing a massive, massive decline in accountability. What he's serving up here is pure, unfiltered tough love, and it's going to seriously challenge a lot of the modern behavioral norms we've just come to accept. Okay, let's dive into this Tomcat's broadcast. Is honestly a bit of a fiery monologue, but we've wrangled his core arguments into a clear, logical framework for us to follow. First up, the epidemic of excuses. Then we'll hit the 24-hour rule, look at the decline of civility, redefine what true failure actually is, and finally, chart out the path forward. So, kicking things off with Section 1, the epidemic of excuses, avoiding accountability. He hits us early on with a recurring kind of colorful motif that we've sanitized just a bit for you here. Excuses are like, everybody has one and everybody uses them. It's so true, right? He makes this razor-sharp point that people just love to complain and cook up excuses for their situations, even when honestly, just a tiny bit of effort could fix the whole problem. He really feels like people would rather just throw their hands up and say, I can't, instead of rolling up their sleeves and doing the actual work required to succeed. Tomcat watches people doing this all the time, just constantly pushing the consequences of their own actions onto external factors. And the common targets of blame? Well, they're exactly what you'd expect. Society, family, spouses, the kids, the community, and yeah, definitely the government and politicians. Based on his analysis, individuals are basically choosing to fail before they even try. And then they're just pointing the finger at everything on this list rather than doing the hard thing and simply looking in the mirror. Moving right along to Section 2, the 24-hour rule. The great equalizer. 24. Now, this number is absolutely crucial to his entire worldview. For Tomcat, these 24 hours are literally the ultimate great equalizer in life. It doesn't matter what your background is or what circumstances you were born into, every single one of us gets the exact same 24 hours in a day. No more, no less. He says it emphatically. Everybody has the same 24 hours. What you fill your time with and do with it is your business. From where he's sitting, failing to utilize that precious time effectively rests 100% on the shoulders of the individual. If you aren't doing the things you need to do, he argues that you completely lose the right to jump on the internet and cry or complain about the consequences. It's harsh, but it's consistent. And this brilliantly illustrates the strict dichotomy he sees in society. On one side, we've got the accountable individual. Now, Tomcat puts himself squarely in this camp. He notes that he actively sacrifices his personal time, he takes initiative, and he forces himself to do the things he really doesn't want to do, all for the sake of his family and his future. But then on the flip side, you have the excuse maker. This is the person who complains about consequences, who is totally paralyzed by indecision and just lacks ambition. He feels incredibly strongly that this weak-minded approach results in absolutely nothing but wasted potential. Which brings us to Section 3, the decline of civility, losing basic etiquette. To really diagnose all this modern rudeness and entitlement we're seeing, he explicitly pulls in a sociological concept known as main character syndrome. Basically, this is a condition where a person views themselves as the absolute star, the lead in their own life story, but to the complete detriment, dismissal, or interruption of literally everyone else around them. They operate like their immediate split-second desires totally eclipse basic courtesy to others. He shares this one highly specific, frustrating anecdote from a recent online fellowship meeting to really paint a picture of this. Okay, step 1. You've got about 30 adults jumping on a call, and they all know the basic rule to mute their microphones. Step 2, the pastor is speaking, but this one woman completely ignores the etiquette and just talks right over him. Step 3, Tomcat isn't having it, so he directly confronts her, calling out her main character syndrome right there for interrupting. And then step 4, instead of just apologizing or taking a tiny bit of accountability for breaking a simple rule, this woman gets unbelievably defensive. His conclusion from watching all this unfold is exasperated, but man, is it clear, adults are acting like children, and we are entirely losing basic common etiquette. He's just baffled by how fundamental knowledge, like, simply not interrupting someone when they are speaking, is somehow getting completely lost in translation today. He sees this intense defensive fragility as a direct symptom of a society that absolutely refuses to be held accountable for even the smallest infractions. Okay, let's shift gears to Section 4, redefining true failure, flipping the definition. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the powerful paradigm shift Tomcat introduces. Think about the standard societal view of failure. You make a mistake or you do something wrong. That's the norm, right? But Tomcat's view is vastly different. To him, true failure is simply not making a choice at all, or just refusing to even try. He phrases it like this, and it really hits hard. Not making a choice is a big decision. It's a big decision that ends in you failing. He constantly preaches this idea that getting out there and trying, even if you fall flat on your face and get it completely wrong, takes actual initiative. And that initiative is fundamentally miles better than lazy indecision. You might fail at the task itself, sure, but in his eyes, you haven't failed as a person because you actually took action. And deeply connected to this is another massive grievance he has with our modern culture. He firmly argues that constructive criticism is not bullying, it is a vital tool for advancement. He points out how today, people so often view genuinely helpful constructive feedback as some sort of destructive personal attack. If someone actually takes the time to point out a shortcoming to help you advance in life, the modern default reaction is to just get mad and play the victim, instead of taking that critique and using it to grow. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, the path forward, actionable steps. So here is Tomcat's concrete strategy for change, pulled straight from his broadcast. First, we simply need to try harder and actually embrace change. Second, build a supportive community. He really stresses that trying together is always better than failing alone. Third, you have to strive for success despite real economic hurdles, like crazy housing costs. He totally acknowledges that times are tough right now, but he insists that shouldn't kill your ambition. Fourth, you've got to come up with a solid plan. And finally, reclaim the human spirit, which he frankly feels we've just let flush down the toilet over these last few years. These are his real-world steps to combat this epidemic of laziness. Now, right in the thick of all this tough love, he actually shows this surprisingly brief moment of genuine empathy. He says, the hardest part is getting the mindset to do something. Then it gets easier. He fully acknowledges that the initial psychological barrier, literally just making the choice to get off the couch and try, is the absolute most difficult hurdle. But once you make that commitment, momentum takes over. So, the crucial point of all this really boils down to a question we all have to ask ourselves. Are you making choices, or are you just making excuses? Tomcat's perspective might be raw, it might be blunt, but his core message about accountability is undeniably powerful. Take a good look in the mirror today and really think about how you're using your 24 hours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and we will catch you next time.